What is a production designer's role on a show, on a TV show? I mean, what was your role on Queen's Gambit? What was expected of you?
Well, I mean, the general thing about the production designer is, or the responsibility, or whatever, however you would call that, is to come up with an idea how the world is supposed or should look like or should be like the world we are building of the story we want to tell. So that is like the one phrase kind of answer, and of course it holds a lot of aspects. So that's the first point, I think, and then of course you need to talk to the producer or director. And I think what is the most important thing in the beginning is to find out what the motivation is in general. And I would always ask the director or the producer, why exactly do you want to spend all that time doing or talking about this issue or showing this kind of story? What is the motivation? Why are we doing this? And sometimes it's harder to find out, and sometimes it's very obvious. And here, with this very, very strong and struggling character, I thought it was rather easy to understand, the meaning behind it. And I also think that if the moment you have a specific and almost weird story like this, it makes it easier to find, your own system of choosing what is right and what is wrong. Because here in this
Why
case,
that?
because once you can decide that everything you're looking for, or what you want to design or decide about, if that goes through the brain or the eyes of your character, then you can't be wrong. And here in this case, knowing that you have this kind of lost soul, and she knows nothing about anything, and nobody ever took care about her education or her social skills or emotional skills or give love to her or whatever, makes her very peculiar. And I think also when you watch the series, you can see that the camera did exactly the same. The camera is very often not only either following her or looking through her eyes as a point of view kind of thing, and explores the world, which makes a big difference. So the filmmaker, the storyteller, is very interested about her and how she explores the world, and because of her abilities and the way the whole story is structured, I kind of realized in the beginning that we are always talking about a genre here. We are always talking about something like a fairy tale. And the moment you have this kind of headlines, on top, you can choose, or you can pick, or you can make every decision through this headline. And once you want to tell a fairy tale, you have to build a different kind of world. I was watching some other shows, based in the 60s afterwards, and once they imagine you're telling a story about racism, and you have a black main character who's struggling in his life, and it's very political, and it's full of violence and injustice and stuff like this. It's impossible to create the same world for this kind of story.
Yeah. So as production designer, you're creating the world of the show. My assumption there is that you're basically touching every department. I mean, from wardrobe to props, probably even cinematography. You must be in direct communication with every department as you're creating this world.
Yes. Props, kind of belong to our department anyway, and everything like cars and stuff like this. Costume is a different department. So here I'm not really working on that. I have conversations, but in a way I kind of, as I said before, having all this conversation with the director in the beginning, and then I represent him. Maybe I represent the script. I represent the character or characters. And then I start walking and go and see what would be right for them, and that is, let's say, as I said, it's the first step and try to get a hold of how the whole thing could look like. In a way, I don't know how the whole thing will look like in the beginning. I don't want that. I don't want to know that, because I think the whole process, which comes afterwards or through the entire process, is so much more interesting and important than my own little opinion in the beginning. So it's a development. And then, of course, what is interesting, especially on a show like this here, is when, imagine how funny it was for me when they asked me to do this, and I read the novel and I found out that 90% of the film plays in the US, and there's only this tiny part in Moscow and a tiny part in Paris. And I mean, let's say in this case, Mexico somehow belongs to the US, even though it doesn't, obviously, but this kind of world. And I asked them, why are you coming?
Why are you using me? Yes.
What do you want here? And
what did they say?
Exactly. And for them, it was very easy. They said, because we need to cover Paris, we need to cover Moscow, we need to come to Europe anyways. So we want to we are interested in how far we can get there. And that was their first question, into my director, saying, what do you think? How much can we cover in Berlin? And then after analyzing the story for the first time, of course, realizing that it's so much an interior world, and she's not really interested in the exterior world. She's always inside, is simply said. And so she's inside the orphanage, then starting in the basement. Then she's at the Wheatley house of her adopting parents, of what do you call it, foster parents. And from then on, she starts to travel, but then we see her in a plane, then we see her in a hotel room, and then we see her at a tournament. And that kind of goes on and on and on. And then we were kind of looking through our locations here in Berlin, thinking about some great and interesting and unusual places, especially for the tournaments. I think we started to look for all those tournament places, for all those ballrooms or conference rooms or classrooms or, all this kind of stuff, and realized that we have a lot to offer in Berlin. Also, maybe because of the history of Berlin, because we have this kind of very clearly Western-based part, we have the Eastern-based part, we have also, because of the history, there was a lot of construction and architecture happening in the 60s in Berlin, because everything was destroyed, so it had to be rebuilt. So those are reasons for very many different kind of places and styles, and we put together a collection of location images and showed them to Scott Frank, the director, and to the producer Bill Holberg, and they were just blown away. They thought, they couldn't believe their eyes.